Welcome to Tom's True Crime. Today we take you to Naperville, Illinois. It is a quiet town about an hour west of Chicago. On the night of October 4th, 1999, shortly after 9 o'clock, 911 operators get a desperate call from two of the town's librarians. It's a frantic call. They say, "Our friend is dying. Get here quickly." The caller says their coworker, 48-year-old Camila Mongan, is lying in a pool of blood near her van. Law enforcement arrives, and the first officer begins to try to administer CPR on Camila, but he quickly realizes that this is no fainting spell. She's been shot. She was shot in the head and twice in her chest area. They try to revive her, but there's no hope for Camila. She's dead. When homicide detectives arrive, their first objective is to find out as much as possible about the victim. There were two witnesses that knew the victim and were able to provide information straight away. Camila and her husband David appear to be the ideal couple living a picture-perfect life: white picket fence, 2 cars, a dog, and children. As detectives peel back the layers of the case, scandalous secrets are revealed. All is not as perfect as it seems. When Camila, a librarian and mother of 3, is assassinated in the township library parking lot, it stunned everybody. It was major news in Metro Chicago, and it was a big story. Camila Elvin was born in 1951 in Miami, Florida. She was kind, very smart, social, and had a lot of fun with friends. She had a great childhood. Her parents were wonderful people known in the community. They had a beautiful home that she grew up in, and her family was very devoted to the Catholic Church. When it was time for high school, Camila enrolled at an all-girls Catholic academy. She was very intelligent, and whatever her goals were, she accomplished them. In 1969, at the start of Camila's senior year, she began dating 17-year-old David Mongan. Camila and David met in a Catholic youth group, and they seemed like opposites. Camila was more of a loner, quiet and shy. David was an overachiever, outgoing, athletic, and the president of his class. He was very nice, and he was nice to her. Camila saw something in David that made her eyes twinkle a little bit. After high school, David and Camila went to college over 1,300 miles apart. David enrolled at West Point in New York to pursue a career in the military, and Camila stayed close to home in Florida studying to become a psychologist. Despite the distance, the romance thrived. Camila and David both graduated from college in 1974, and they got married right away. The life of the doting military wife suited Camila. She and David raised 2 daughters and a son over the course of the next 2 decades, all while moving around the country from base to base. When she had 3 children, she decided to stay home and raise her children, so she was not working. She was a stay-at-home mom for many years. Camila was very focused on her children, wanting them to have as normal an upbringing as possible. Even though they traveled so much, she liked to cook, she did arts and crafts. She was very focused on being a good mother, a good wife, a good person. After 2 decades of service, David was ready to part ways with the Army in 1993. David retired from the military as a major, and they moved back to Miami, Florida. The problem was he couldn't find work. After a few years of testing the Florida job market, David landed a lucrative IT consulting job at a firm in Illinois. They moved to Illinois. They thought the area was blissful. They lived near the lake in a wonderful community. Camila was very happy she was working at the library, but the demands of David's new job eventually caused difficulty in marriage. David got a great job at an IT consulting firm, and part of that job was flying to Florida many times a year. David was traveling a lot and spending a lot of time in Florida. It's not too much different than when he was in the military, that he would travel and be gone for a long time. The outward appearance, this looked like the perfect family living the dream in Naperville Township. Her neighbors liked her. There wasn't anybody that didn't like Camila. She was a pleasant person going about her life. But now, only 3 years after moving to Naperville, Camila is found dead outside the library where she works, and detectives are determined to figure out why. What was interesting to the police right from the beginning is that nothing was taken from her. Her purse was still there. There was cash. She was wearing jewelry. They ruled out robbery immediately. Law enforcement begins to question the co-workers of Camila Mongan's, and they begin to describe a person who is a devout Catholic who goes to Mass almost every day. Why would somebody shoot her 3 times, especially in the head? What was the motive of this particular crime? They were trying to sort out and figure out how something like that could happen. From law enforcement's perspective, when a wife is murdered, the first person they look at is the husband. Detectives in Naperville, Illinois, are investigating the execution-style murder of a mild-mannered librarian, Camila Mongan. When you look at her, she's the least likely murder victim you could ever imagine. This is a woman who had no enemies, but even so, law enforcement is experienced enough to know that even people with no enemies, there is someone out there who doesn't like you. Detectives continue to question their only known witnesses. Camila's co-workers who found her body at the scene of the crime. Speaking to her co-workers, they found out that her husband, David Mongan, had an affair with a businesswoman in Florida. The co-workers say the woman's name is Alexa Neumann. David met Alexa at a bar, and the two of them hit it off and ultimately became lovers. 43-year-old Alexa Neumann was the picture of success. She was a registered nurse with her own very lucrative business. Alexa Neumann was born in New Orleans. She did well at high school and graduated with a 4.0 grade point average. She also excelled in college and ended up getting her nursing degree, and in 1989, Alexa moved to the Panhandle of Florida, and that's where Alexa really started her career as a nurse. And from there, she decided to go into her own business. It was a home care business where she had people working for her that she would send out for home care, and at one point, she was doing $1 million business. She was setting up a computer system for medical billing, and David knew a lot about that. Alexa hired David to help with some of her financial aspects of her business. David decided that he was going to leave his job and work for Alexa. In May of 1998, David moved over 1,000 miles away from his family to Florida. He told Camila it was a temporary move for work. There wasn't any indication of any trouble. Nobody had filed for divorce. They were living what appeared to be happy life. David had this second life in Florida, but this secret mix of business and pleasure came with a cost. In October of 1998, after more than 4 months of David working and living in Florida, Camila finally realized her husband was doing more than business with Alexa. Camila is at home thinking something's up with him. When Camila confronted him about the affair, David came clean. He confirmed that he had an affair with a woman in Florida. He spent several months with her. Despite the heartbreak, Camila worked hard to keep the marriage together. Camila is not going to get out of the marriage because she's Catholic and she wants to keep her marriage intact. Those are situations that a lot of people keep to themselves, but those who knew her could sense something was wrong because they have known her for so long. Camila thought that if she just hung on, David would come to his senses. Camila would go to the church and say rosaries every day for the sake of the marriage. Those prayers were answered when David came back to Illinois and said, "I'm done. I'm sorry. Please forgive me, the affair's over. I want my family, and I want you back, Camila." Now, 6 months after David's return from Florida, his wife, Camila Mongan, has been found murdered outside the local library. Detectives immediately bring David in for questioning. The sheriff's office went after David right away. He was already notified by Camila's co-workers that she was dead. The police were highly suspicious of David just because they all know when these things happen that they usually happen because of somebody close to you. When asked about his whereabouts on the night of the murder, David says he was at home with his son, 17-year-old Evan. His son gave him an alibi that he never left. He was with him all night long. Obviously, it still doesn't rule out that David has something to do with this. When police asked David if there were any problems in his marriage, he admits to the relationship with Alexa, but claims that the affair is over. The police were asking really probing personal questions, and he was smart enough not to lie to the police. When asked about the last time he talked to Alexa, David is upfront about that too. When he got the call that Camila was dead, he was on the phone with Alexa talking about business. If David insists he ended the relationship, why was he on the phone with his one-time mistress on the night of his wife's murder? Police are looking at motives. She's a married woman and her husband had marital problems with her, left her for months for another woman in Florida, so maybe he decided to get her out of the way. David swears the affair is over. But he says a few months earlier after he returned to his marriage, Alexa gave him some stunning news. Alexa started to tell David she's got cancer and she's pregnant. According to David, upon hearing this news, he made a decision few people could understand or explain. David gets the idea to bring these two women together in a hotel room somewhere in the area to let them talk this out. To police, this was the most remarkable part of the case, that he put the lover, and his wife together. David says the meeting took place at a local hotel on the July 4th weekend, just 3 months before the murder. The three of them talked for a while, and then David left the room, leaving the two women alone. That must have been pretty strange for all of them. David was going to be responsible and help Alexa take care of the baby. He wasn't giving up his family. He was married to Camila for 25 years. He thought explaining the situation that they're in, it was a logical thing to do because she was going to have this baby. David says when Camila learned the details of the affair and the pregnancy, she immediately became upset and stormed out. Camila just leaves there in tears, and David does console her, and he drives her home. But then he says, "I'm going back to the hotel tonight." David admitted that that night he went back to the hotel after dropping his wife off and had sexual relations with Alexa. Now 3 months later, with Camila murdered and David alibied, investigators turn to Alexa, the only other person who seems to have a motive to kill Camila. They call her at her home in Pensacola. She admits to the affair, but denies having had anything to do with the killing. Alexa says she has proof in phone records that she was nowhere near the crime scene. She gives police the times. The last time she was on the phone with David was right around the time of the murder. She says, "Check my phone records. I've had nothing to do with this. I'm sorry that woman was murdered, but it's not me." Both Camila's husband, David, and his lover, Alexa, appear to be ruled out. Less than 12 hours later, news of the murder stuns the town of Naperville and has worried residents looking for answers. The town is really living in fear. A woman, a housewife, a mother, a librarian is executed. Was this a random act? Is someone going to start picking off people around town? People closed their doors, put the shades down in their windows. The town was living in fear because there were no answers. Less than 24 hours into the investigation of Camila Mongan's murder, detectives believe there are only two people who might have a motive in the crime: her husband David and his longtime lover, Alexa Neumann. However, both David and Alexa have rock-solid alibis. The police were running out of leads. The case was going cold. There was no evidence left at the scene, but the library's security system offers a potential breakthrough. There were cameras at that library. The first law enforcement officer begins to look at that video, and what does he see? He sees Camila Mongan walk out of the library, walk up to her vehicle. She gets in, she starts driving, and she realizes she has a flat tire, so she stops. She gets out to check the flat tire, and that's when you see another car pull up near the van. You can see a sedan pull up. A man gets out. He appears to be all dressed in black, and he approaches her and very quickly murders her right there in the parking lot. He shoots her directly in the head. He walks over her execution style, puts 2 more rounds in her, jumps back in that car, and they take off. The video is alarming. Investigators watch the footage over and over again, looking for some way to identify the shooter or the getaway vehicle. They're able to see some forms or shapes in the sedan that led them to believe there was at least one person and maybe 2 in the sedan when the man got out and murdered Camila. It's impossible to read the vehicle's license plate, but grainy still frames of the killers are released to the public, which results in a potential lead. 2 people come forward right away and say, "I was driving by the library right at that time, and I saw that car pull out with 3 people in it, and this person verifies that the person driving was a woman." Unfortunately, they were not able to make out age or race, just a silhouette of an individual. While detectives search for new leads, friends and family lay Camila to rest. Camila's family went to the vigil. She had a closed casket and then had a huge funeral with lots of people. That's something this horrendous would happen to her. It's a situation you'll never get past. A month passes and there are no new leads. Finally, on November 19, 1999, detectives get an unexpected break. A man named Eric Millan calls from Florida and says, "I have some information about this murder in Naperville Township." He says, "I believe my ex-girlfriend, Millan, and her new boyfriend, Jason, they killed Camila Mongan." Brian tells police that just a few days earlier, Eden, his one-time girlfriend, told him she was involved in a murder in Illinois. In this case, when this tipster called in, he came in with some credible information. He's giving the detectives names, and there's a lot of information. When the detectives got off that call, they were hitting the computers, bringing the names up fast. The question now is, who is Millan? A quick background check reveals a stunning connection to someone close to the case. Eden was a certified nurse, and she worked for Alexa for years. She was one of the first employees she ever hired. Once they start putting all these pieces together, with all the dominoes falling, there's one left, and that's Alexa Neumann. When detectives talked to Alexa's coworkers, they learned that Alexa was as hard on her employees as she was on herself. She had a lot of people working for her, and people were a bit afraid of her. She was ambitious, but a difficult person to deal with. Employees said when she walked in, you never knew who was coming in that door. She could just fly off the handle like that at any little thing. Alexa's coworkers claim Alexa approached all her relationships with the same intensity. The relationship between Alexa and David was very strange because he had this lovely, classy wife at home, and Alexa had some issues. She had a pretty volatile temper. Yet David was spellbound for over a year. There was a lot of back and forth. Both Alexa and David were pushing each other, and Alexa was determined not to let him go. Investigators must now determine if Alexa's infatuation with David led to his wife's murder. Detectives head down to Pensacola, Florida to interview Alexa, and immediately they notice a baby bump. She is pregnant. Deputies grill Alexa, but she doesn't flinch. It's a very lengthy interview, 7 hours. She gave some information. She was pretty cagey about what she said and what she did. Again and again, Alexa denies involvement in any murder plot and insists that if Eden set out to kill Camila, she did it on her own. Alexa was saying, Eden noticed this, knew how much I was in love, and felt that David was playing a game with me and not being completely honest. He loved her at one point, but decided to go back to his family, and Eden was upset with David over that. So that's Alexa's explanation why Eden would have gotten involved and tried to do something that she thought was helping Alexa. She was shifting blame left and right, not taking any responsibility. She adamantly denied everything. Over the course of their interview, something unusual catches the detective's attention. While this conversation is going on, Alexa's cat enters the room. It jumped on her stomach, and her stomach went completely flat. Detectives realized the pregnancy was a lie. There is no baby in Alexa's baby bump. A woman faking of pregnancy is an awful deception. She must have stuffed the pillow up under her top when the police came. She wasn't wandering around with a pillow under her shirt 24 hours a day. Detectives investigating the murder of Camila Mongan have narrowed in on Alexa Neumann as a possible suspect, but they lack the evidence for an arrest. So they tracked down Alexa's employee, Eden Millan, and her boyfriend, 19-year-old Jason Rich. When Eden was interviewed, the investigator said, "We haven't arrested you. We just want to ask you about the murder of Camila Mongan." She initially said, "I just don't know what you're talking about." Eden continues to deny everything, but Jason cracks right away. Jason says the plan, which Alexa comes up with Eden, is, you guys need to drive up, not fly, drive a car from here to Illinois, commit that murder, and then drive back. According to Jason, Alexa knew just how to motivate Eden. Eden Millan was not a good employee, and Alexa used that leverage to go to Eden and say, "Listen, I'm going to fire you, but if you can find me someone to get rid of this problem I have, I'll let you keep your job. I'll even pay you $5,000, and I'll pay whoever you get $5,000. Alexa had provided Eden and Jason with a map of where the library was located, where the Mongan house was located, and a picture of Camila. Jason says on September 13th, he and Eden drove to Illinois to kill Camila Mongan. During the confession, Jason spoke about their first trip to Illinois. They sat outside the library for several hours. They observed her and they discussed what they wanted to do. But what happens is they chicken out. They don't have the guts to go through with it. According to Jason, Alexa wasn't ready to put the murder plot to rest, and eventually Alexa found someone who was willing to pull the trigger, her former roommate's fiancé, 32-year-old long-haul trucker Nathan Perez. They're looking for somebody to help them out, kill somebody, and that's where Nathan's name came in. Nathan says he's not doing this alone. If he is doing this, Eden and Jason are going to be there. They are driving the car, and they're going to be with Nathan all the way. Jason says he and Eden and Nathan drove to Naperville and set the murder plot in motion on the night of October 4th. They were waiting in the back of the parking lot, and right before Camila is supposed to get out of work because they know the exact time. They drive up, and they slash the tire, and then they drive away. They drive out of the parking lot around the block a little bit, and then they come back when they know she's out. They drove up in a car while she was attending to her car. Nathan, who was in the back seat, gets out of the car, dressed all in black, and just walks up to Camila Mongan and executes her. Gets back in that car, takes off. The killers head back to Florida. convinced they've pulled off the perfect murder. But there was one problem. They didn't know there was surveillance video of the library. Jason's story of the murder matches up perfectly with what's on the surveillance video. When investigators confront Eden with Jason's version of events, she folds. She was very distraught, very emotional, and it seemed like she unburdened herself with her involvement in this case. Eden came up with her own story about Alexa manipulated her, held everything over her head. She worked with Alexa. She was afraid that Alexa was going to have her child taken away. She admits to the murder. Nathan jumped out of the car and shot her. Eden said they did it for the money. She was very remorseful, crying. But it could be because she got caught, not remorseful about killing someone. Eden and Jason are arrested and charged with murder. 2 days later, on December 2nd, the FBI gets a tip that Nathan Perez is in Connecticut. Nathan Perez was a long-haul truck driver. He was making his way up 95. Police formed up a perimeter around the vehicle, a big 18-wheel truck. Police called him out via bullhorn, and he came out in a compliant manner, arrested and booked in the local jail. He knew that he was caught, and he knew why, and that showed on his face, and he proceeded to confess to the crime of murder for hire of Camila Mongan, and that he was hired by Alexa Neumann. With identical accounts from each of the 3 suspects in custody, all signs point to Alexa as the mastermind, but investigators need proof, so they start by conducting a search of Eden's home. The police obtained a search warrant on Eden's house and found a picture of Camila, the map of the pertinent locations in Naperville, handwritten schedule of Camila's hours. The most incriminating piece of evidence was there was a map of Naperville. The Mongan home and the library are circled. Detectives also find what appears to be a fake self-exit note made to look like it's written from Camila to David. After they compared the self-exit note for handwriting exemplars and fingerprints, both of those analyses came back to Alexa. They were able to determine that Alexa had written the notes about Camila's schedule, and then they also found Alexa's fingerprints on a lot of the material. She provided all the evidence you need to convict her. With a mountain of evidence against her, investigators have one last unanswered question. Did Alexa plot alone? The police initially were trying to make sure that David didn't plant this idea in anybody's head, didn't pay anybody. A mounting pile of evidence, and the confessions of 3 accomplices indicate that Alexa Neumann promised them $15,000 for the murder of Camila Mongan. Law enforcement moves in on Alexa Neumann, and they put her in cuffs. Her reaction to that is, I had nothing to do with this. Those people acted on their own. When they patted her down and cuffed her up, they found 3 towels underneath her shirt. Alexa was not pregnant. All lies, all manipulation. She was playing this pregnancy scenario. After her arrest, investigators bring Alexa to the station to question her again. Alexa admits faking the pregnancy, but claims it has nothing to do with the murder. She's saying, it's because I love David and I was pregnant and lost the baby, and I wanted him to know that I cared about him and wanted him to still show the love that he told me he had for me. As for her claim about having terminal cancer, medical records expose the truth. There was nothing in the medical records saying she had cancer. As questioning continues, Alexa attempts to use David as the scapegoat this time. Alexa shifted blame onto David. She claimed that David was the mastermind of this crime. By the time the warrant had been authorized, and you looked in the discovery, it was clear that David didn't have involvement in it. She stuck to her story. She flat out refused to confess or to even acknowledge she had anything to do with it. These 3 people drive 1,000 miles to kill a librarian because of this tawdry affair this woman was having with David Mongan. People were mesmerized by the story because it was like a soap opera. Before the trials begin, Jason Ridge accepts a plea deal. He agrees to testify against Alexa and his girlfriend, Eden Millan. In exchange for his testimony, Jason Ridge was sentenced 20 years in prison. Next up is Nathan Perez. On the day of the trial, he pled guilty and agreed to testify against Eden and Alexa. Nathan Perez is convicted of first-degree felony murder. He gets life in prison without the possibility of parole. With 2 guilty pleas, prosecutors turned to their remaining suspects, Eden and Alexa. Prosecutors tried Neumann and Millan together, and they had separate juries to decide the case. On December 11, 2000, a jury reaches a verdict on Eden Millan. It was guilty as charged on both the conspiracy and the first-degree murder. Eden is sentenced to life without parole. She has expressed remorse for her part in the crime, but still blames Alexa. Despite Alexa's claims of innocence, prosecutors believed she displayed a clear motive. She wanted David back, and she didn't want Camila in the way. For the jury, the testimonies of the three conspirators were verified by the surveillance video. Alexa Neumann is also found guilty of first-degree murder and gets life without parole. Alexa Neumann maintains she is innocent to this day. The evidence was pretty overwhelming. Everybody loses in a murder case. David Mongan was found to have no role in his wife's murder, but even supporters agree his affair ultimately led to Camila's death. Camila's family were angry at David. He brought this evil person into their family. They say they will never get over it. Alexa's motive was to live happily ever after with David and would never know what happened to Camila if everybody kept quiet. She thought this was going to be the best way to get what she wanted. Alexa and Millan are both serving their life sentences at the Logan Correctional Center, Lincoln, Illinois. Nathan Perez is serving his life sentence at the Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois. The tragic murder of Camila Mongan highlights the devastating consequences of betrayal and the destructive power of jealousy and deceit. Personal betrayals can profoundly impact on everyone involved, shattering lives, destroying families, and leaving behind a trail of emotional and psychological scars. The chilling reality of such crimes illustrates the lengths to which people might go when consumed by rage and possessiveness, revealing the often overlooked dark side of human emotions. The husband's extramarital affair ultimately led to his complicity in a crime orchestrated by his mistress, reveals a complex interplay of human vulnerability and moral failure. His actions reflect the profound impact of temptation and the consequences of allowing personal desires to override ethical considerations and commitments. The allure of an affair often blinds individuals to the long-term ramifications of their choices, leading them down a path of betrayal and deceit that can spiral into far more severe consequences than initially anticipated. Fleeting temptations and immediate gratification can have irreversible and devastating effects. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tom's True Crime. If you are interested in more in-depth investigations into the most perplexing crimes, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. What are your thoughts about this case? Please share them with us in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe.